Clockwork. Chapter 1. The Mall. The mall on a Thursday evening wasn't too busy, just enough people to fill the air with a low, constant hum. Cassian trailed behind the crowds, hands in his hoodie pocket, watching his sister Ellie and her best friend Sophie drift ahead toward the boutique shops on the second level. Sophie's hair, frizzy and curly, bounced lightly with every step. She wore her volleyball hoodie over black leggings, her gym bag slung carelessly over one shoulder. Ellie had on the same school gear, but Sophie made it look cooler. Cass stopped outside the boutique window as the girls did the same. The storefront was glassy and bright, with racks of trendy clothes and shelves of handbags, candles, and stuff Cass couldn't name. Sophie leaned in, squinting slightly at something near the center display. She tilted her head, tapped her chin with one finger, and smiled. Ellie said something and nudged her playfully. Sophie laughed. Then they both turned and disappeared into the store. Cass lingered. The display held a collection of pastel handbags, some big, some tiny, all with shiny tags and straps. He couldn't tell which one Sophie had been looking at. They all looked the same to him. Expensive. He waited near a clothing kiosk across the walkway, pretending to scroll his phone. 5 minutes passed. The girls came back out talking fast and laughing about something. Neither carried a bag. Sophie glanced once more at the window as they passed. Then they were gone, turning down the escalator and out of sight. Cass checked the time on his phone. 6:38. He waited another beat, then stepped inside the boutique. The air smelled like perfume and leather. A woman in her 20s stood behind the counter, dressed in all black, her hair in a high ponytail. She gave him a polite smile. Looking for something in particular? Cass scratched the back of his neck. Sort of. There were 2 girls in here a few minutes ago. Volleyball hoodies. The woman raised an eyebrow. We get a lot of girls in here. Right, he said. I was trying to figure out what to get for one of the, like a present. Her expression softened a little. Oh, that's sweet. The woman walked around the counter and glanced toward the window display. The woman smiled. The girl with the curls was eyeballing that purse. She pointed to a soft green bag with gold zippers and a woven strap. She picked it up twice, asked if it came in black, even checked the price tag. Cass nodded slowly. Okay. Yeah, thanks. No problem. You might want to move quick, though. We only have 2 left. His heart sank as he glanced at the price tag. $359.99. Outside, the sky beyond the skylight ceiling was starting to fade. Slate gray tinged with amber. Cass pulled his hoodie tighter and took the stairs down to the sidewalk level. The wind was cooler down there, funneled between buildings, carrying a trace of grill smoke from a diner a block over. He turned toward home. His steps slowed near the corner of Clinton Street. Just before the crosswalk, tucked between a barbershop and a jazz cafe, stood a narrow building with a deep window display. Behind the glass, clocks of every shape and size sat arranged in quiet harmony. Brass and wood, polished chrome and beveled glass, each one frozen in time with one another. A crooked sign in the window caught his eye. Help wanted. Inquire within. Cass stared at it for a long moment. Then he stepped closer to the glass and looked again, and thought of the purse that Sophie liked. At the mall. Chapter 2. Gears and Glass. The bell over the door wasn't electronic. It rang out sharp and real, a clean, metallic ting that seemed too crisp for such an old building. Cass stepped inside and let the door ease shut behind him. The sounds of traffic and distant music faded, replaced by a soft, irregular chorus of ticking. It was everywhere. The shop was narrow but tall. The walls were lined with clocks, framed in wood, brass and metal, some clean and modern, others heavy with carved detail. Mantel clocks rested on shelves. Cuckoo clocks perched like birds waiting to spring. A few grandfather clocks stood upright in the back, their pendulums swinging at different paces. The place smelled like sawdust, polish, and something old like oil, maybe, or books. Cass took a slow step toward the counter. A man sat behind it, hunched over a padded mat, inspecting something small with a jeweler's loop wedged into one eye. His hair was white and wild, and his mustache curved over a thin, thoughtful mouth. He wore a brown vest, a white shirt, and round gold glasses pushed up onto his forehead. "You're early," the man said, without looking up. Cass blinked. "Sorry." The man raised his head, removed the loop, and peered at him with clear grey eyes. "For the job," he said, straightening. "Most kids see a help wanted sign and think it means someone else should apply." Yeah, Cass said. I saw the sign." "Then you're ahead of schedule," the man said with a faint smile. Cass took another step toward the counter. "I'm Cassian Warner. Cass, usually." The man extended a hand. His grip was firm, not rough, just solid. "Thomas Finnegan," he said. Cass glanced around again. "This place is cool." "Thank you. I think so as well. I spent quite a lot of time here," he said with a slight grin. He motioned behind him to the old brass register on the back counter. "Job simple. Open and close on time. Keep the register straight. Take payments. Give change. If someone drops off a repair, tag it and log it in the ledger." He stepped aside, revealing a thick, handwritten logbook bound in leather. "You'll work the front. No need to touch anything behind the curtain unless someone comes in to pick up a finished job. Understood?" "Yes, sir," Cass said, nodding. "I can do that. I'll show you the basics today. If you do well, we'll talk about tomorrow." The next hour passed fast. Mr. Finnegan showed him how to punch totals into the register, how to slide the drawer open and count bills, how to handle tags for incoming items, and how to mark completed ones with the finished date. Every step was done by hand. No tablet, no scanner, no barcode stickers, just pen, paper, keys, and metal. "People don't bring timepieces here just to be fixed," Finnegan said, as he slid open a drawer full of watch straps and tiny gears. "They bring them here to be respected. If you treat time casually, it tends to repay the favor." Cass nodded, unsure whether that was a rule or a warning. By the time the last customer left, a woman picking up a chiming desk clock wrapped in velvet. Finnegan seemed satisfied. He locked the display case and turned to Cass. $50 a day will be your wages." "I've got a personal errand tomorrow," he said. "Out of town, just for a few days. Open at 9, close at 7, same as today. If someone comes for a pickup, check the log, find the tag, confirm the match, and make the exchange. That's it." Cass's eyebrows rose. "You want me to cover? Really?" Finnegan raised an eyebrow. "You have your phone?" Cass nodded. "Don't use it during work. You have a notepad and a pencil. You'll be fine." He slid a small brass key across the counter. "Front door. Don't lose it." The next morning, he arrived at 8:45. The city was just waking up. People walked past on their way to coffee shops and offices, few of them giving the clock shop a second glance. Chapter 3. pocket watch. The second day was quiet. Easy. Cass arrived early, flipped the sign to open, and ran through his checklist. Sweep the floor, dust the glass, confirm the petty cash count in the old brass register, just like Mr. Finnegan had shown him. At 10:17 a.m., the first customer walked in. "Pick up," the man said, offering a small pink tag. "Name's Derwin. Brought in a silver Hamilton last week." Cass nodded, taking the tag and scanning the ledger Mr. Finnegan had meticulously logged by hand. Neat rows of names, drop-off dates, tiny repair notes. He found the matching entry, initials crisp, description clear. "Give me 1 sec," Cass said, slipping through the back curtain. The back room was narrower than he remembered. Clock bodies lined the walls, towering cabinets, wooden chassis, intricate assemblies with tiny exposed gears and tuning forks. Everything had a place. It wasn't messy, just dense. He passed the tall cases and turned into the shelving section. Stand-up clocks on one side, wall clocks across from them, desk clocks, watch trays, and near the far end, a narrow pull-out drawer labelled pocket. He slid it open. About 8 lined the tray. Most were polished. Some still bore cloth wraps or masking tape with job codes. He scanned the tags, looking for Derwin's. 4th from the left. Clean face, subtle scratches, fixed clasp. He reached for it, but his eyes flicked left. The second to last watch in the tray was different. Ornate. Silver casing, darker in tone. Aged, but not dull. The face wasn't like the others. It had 3 concentric rings, hours, minutes, and days. 31 numbers curled around the smallest circle in precise print, and above them, inlaid beneath the top hinge, a small cutaway labelled month, with a rotating dial that showed a glowing number 4. April. "Cool," Cass said. The watch worked perfectly. Cass had never seen a watch like this before. He wondered why it was marked for repair. There didn't seem to be anything wrong with it. In fact, it was beautiful. He leaned in, eyes narrowing. The 11 was marked by a slender extra hand, different from the hour and min hands. It didn't tick. It just sat there, perfectly aligned. Cass blinked, shook his head, and grabbed Derwin's Hamilton from the tray. By late afternoon, the shop returned to silence. The final customer left around 6:30. Cass took his time finishing up. He didn't need to be home right away. Mom and Ellie had leftovers tonight, and nobody would miss him for a bit. At 7 o'clock, he flipped the sign to closed and locked the front door. Instead of grabbing his backpack, he drifted back through the curtain. The back room was still and dim, with golden light bleeding through the dusty blinds. The clock seemed quieter now. He supposed he had gotten used to the sound. Cass made his way back to the pocket watch tray and stared at it again. He picked it up gently this time, cradling it in his hand. There was no label on it. He turned it over. The back was smooth, cool to the touch. He tried pulling the crown to adjust it. It didn't budge. He pressed it. Nothing. He pulled out his phone. The watch was keeping perfect time. The face was mesmerizing. The glass shimmered faintly when it caught the light. Behind him, a sudden bong shattered the stillness. Cass jumped, nearly dropping the watch. The grandfather clock behind him had begun to chime, low, resonant, precise. He counted along. 1, 2, 3. It kept going. 8 chimes in total, exactly 8 p.m. His stomach dropped. Now he was actually late. Where had the time gone? He scrambled, snatched his backpack, put his phone in his pocket, and headed for the door. Outside, the streetlights had kicked on. A breeze stirred the sidewalk litter. He adjusted his bag on his shoulder. He felt the weight of his phone in his pocket, relieved he hadn't left it in the shop during his rush to get home. He jogged the first block, turned the corner, and made it home just before dinner went cold. It wasn't until after he ate and went upstairs to change that he realized something was off. He emptied his hoodie pocket onto the bed, the key, and the watch. He stared at it. The silver glinted in the soft lamp glow. The face hadn't moved. April 11th, 8:05. Cass looked at his phone. The time was 9:37. The pocket watch that had worked so perfectly at the shop had stopped running. He sat the watch down on his dresser and decided that he would make sure and return it exactly where he'd found it back at the shop in the morning. He showered, brushed his teeth, put on some gym shorts and a t-shirt. He sat down in the black gaming chair in front of his TV, put on his headset, flipped on the game system, and readied himself for a couple of hours of Phantom Ops. He logged in. Username, Clockwork. He chuckled to himself. He had changed his username to Clockwork a few months ago, when he had had a particularly good game, and one of his opponents made the comment, "You executed that mission like clockwork." He'd liked the sound of it, so he adopted it for his handle. And now, he worked at a clock shop. Go figure. Guess it was meant to be. He loved this game. He was good at it. Almost the best. There was one player he could never quite get the best of. Spike 25. And as if summoned, Spike 25 logged on. Cass gripped his controller a little tighter and grinned. Not tonight, bro. Not tonight. Chapter 4. Deja Vu. Cassian woke to sunlight, the faint smell of coffee, and the sound of Ellie banging a cabinet door. Same as always. He sat up, rubbing sleep from his face, and glanced at the digital clock on his nightstand. 7:18 a.m. He yawned, stood, and stretched. His hoodie was still crumpled at the foot of his bed. He looked at the nightstand where he had sat the watch the night before. It wasn't there. He checked the floor beneath the nightstand, under the bed, in his pockets. He checked everywhere. The watch was nowhere to be found. Panic filled his chest. He would be in so much trouble when Mr. Finnegan returned. He took a deep breath. Mr. Finnegan wouldn't be back at the shop for a few more days. The watch had to be somewhere. He would find it tonight after work. Hopefully, its owner wouldn't come for it before he could find it and put it back where it belonged. Cass dressed, pocketed his phone, and trotted downstairs. "Stir-fry leftovers for lunch," his mom said as she passed him a thermos. He blinked. "Didn't we just have that yesterday?" She gave him a look. "Yes, and you didn't complain then either." Ellie was seated at the counter, wolfing down half a banana and scrolling on her phone. Cass checked the time. 7:42 a.m. Weird. She's starting to be predictable, he thought. He grabbed his backpack, waved goodbye, and stepped outside. The walk to Finnegan's felt too smooth. Same man watering the same hanging plant outside the bistro. Same green sedan rolling slowly through the stop sign on 5th and Clinton. Same jogger with the blue headband. Same moment she looked down at her watch. Cass reached the shop door and paused. His reflection in the glass stared back at him, just like yesterday. Same hoodie. Same wind in his hair. He pulled out the key ring, heavy in his palm, and unlocked the front door. The bell chimed. The ticking welcomed him. He blinked. That felt familiar too. The day crawled by in the same strange rhythm. Same customers, same orders, same comments. The man with the silver Hamilton returned, but that made no sense. Cass had already given it to him yesterday. The exact watch, the exact tag. But here he was again, handing over the same pink slip. Cass took it without saying a word, pretending to be new to the transaction. He went into the back room, and sure enough, the Hamilton was right there in the tray, exactly where it had been. Cass froze. His eyes weren't focused on the Hamilton watch anymore. He stared wide-eyed at what sat in the second slot from the left. The ornate pocket watch that he he knew he had taken home with him the night before. Cass finally snapped out of his trance. Everything was exactly the way it was the day before, as if yesterday hadn't happened. He returned to the front desk and handed the man the Hamilton watch. The man nodded, thanked him, and left. Cass stared at the front door long after it closed. He turned slowly and walked back into the repair room. The pocket watch was still sitting there, partly relieved that he hadn't lost it, but totally dumbfounded at the situation he found himself in. He picked up the watch. It worked perfectly. He retrieved his phone from his pocket. The time was 10:29. He looked at the pocket watch. It was keeping perfect time. But the date was wrong. The date on the pocket watch read April 11th. Today was the 12th, wasn't it? He checked his phone again. April 11th. Cass felt dizzy. He placed the watch in his pocket and returned to the front desk. That night, he laid in bed, staring at the ceiling fan overhead. Cass was mentally exhausted from trying to sort out the day's events. He held the pocket watch in his hand. He raised it up to examine it again. He turned it over slowly, watching how the lamplight slid across its surface. He took a breath. Then he closed the watch and set it down on his nightstand. "I'm just tired," he muttered. But deep down, he didn't believe that. Not really. Chapter 5. Confirmation. Cass didn't rush to get out of bed. He stared at the ceiling, waiting. From downstairs, the sound of silverware clinking against a ceramic plate. Ellie, half a banana, stir-fry, thermos, cabinet slam. Right on time. He sat up, heart already thudding. The clock on his nightstand, 7:18 a.m. He turned his head slowly. The pocket watch wasn't there. He stood, walked to his closet, and stared at the same hoodie he wore the day before. He put it on anyway. At breakfast, his mum handed him the thermos. "Stir-fry leftovers," she said. Cass didn't respond. He left the house in a daze. Same man watering the plant. Same green sedan rolling the stop. Same jogger, same blue headband, same exact moment she checked her watch. Cass stopped walking and looked up at the sky. Not the sky, the pattern of it, the clouds, the light. It was identical. He kept walking. Back at Finnegan's, he opened the shop like usual. The register clicked, the clocks ticked, and at 10:17, the man with the Hamilton came in again. Cass didn't flinch this time. He took the tag, fetched the watch, and handed it over like it was just another day. Because it was, again and again. The fourth loop was when he snapped. He walked into the shop at 9 a.m., locked the door behind him, flipped the sign to closed, and just stood there, staring at the front windows. Then he opened the register, grabbed a stack of receipts, and wrote a message on each one in bold Sharpie. "If you're reading this, I'm stuck." He slid one under the front door of the shop next door, another under the glass case, another inside the Hamilton tray in the back room. He texted Ellie, "Hey, what's today?" She replied instantly, "Tuesday. Why? What's the date?" "April 11th. Same as this morning. Are you okay?" He powered off his phone. That night, he tried something different. He placed the pocket watch under a glass jar, weighted it down with a dictionary, just to see. The next morning, the jar was gone. So was the dictionary. And so was the watch. By the 6th day, he was just angry. He didn't go to work. He didn't change clothes. He sat on the edge of his bed for 2 straight hours. Then he booted up Phantom Ops. Spike 25 was online again. This time, Cass wasn't here for fun. He joined the fire team and absolutely wiped the floor with every opponent, every spawn point, every ambush, every flank. He knew them all, because he'd played this exact match before. Maybe not yesterday, maybe not the day before that, but he had played it, and he remembered. By the end of the round, Spike 25, usually the top scorer, was in second. Cass was number 1, just this once. He leaned back, finally breathing again. It wasn't escape, but it was something. Chapter 6, Spike 25. Cass didn't open the shop the following morning. He didn't even go near Clinton Street. After 6 loops, he figured one more absence wouldn't matter, not if he was just going to wake up and do it all over again. Instead, he wandered. He left the house just before 9 a.m. and drifted past the familiar intersections, people locked in the same motions, saying the same things, living the same day without knowing it. He passed the coffee shop with the crooked chalkboard sign, past the guy setting up the lunch cart for the 6th time. It felt like walking through a stage play. He ended up at the high school gym. A poster taped to the glass read, JV and Varsity Volleyball, Summer League, 9:30 a.m. Cass pulled the door open and slipped inside. The gym smelled like fresh rubber and lemon-scented floor polish. A small crowd was scattered across the bleachers, parents, students, a few stragglers who just liked sports. Cass kept his hood up and found a seat halfway up the bleachers. He didn't know why he was here. Maybe he just wanted something, anything that felt different, even if it wasn't. On the court, Ellie was warming up with the rest of the team. Sophie stood near the net, stretching, her curls tied back in a high puff. She looked focused, loose, confident. They ran a drill, set, spike, reset. Cass watched without thinking. His mind felt half detached. Then the match started. The crowd clapped politely through the first few serves. One of the players made a clean dig, passed it forward. Sophie moved into position, waited for the set. And Ellie gave it to her, a perfect arcing set. Sophie leapt, smooth and powerful. Crack. The ball slammed against the hardwood on the other side of the net. No one touched it. The crowd clapped louder. A voice, somewhere in the middle bleachers, shouted, "Nice spike, 25. Cass froze. Everything slowed. His eyes shifted back to Sophie, her back turned, jersey number glowing faintly in the lights. 25. His pulse jumped. No way, no freaking way. Spike 25. Sophie was Spike 25. The one he'd been gaming with. The one he'd looked up to. The one he had finally outplayed. The one he thought was a guy. And she was right there, laughing, high-fiving Ellie, brushing her hair back with one hand. Cass sat motionless as the game went on. His thoughts spiraled. She was Spike 25. Cass booted up Phantom Ops for the 4th time that day. He tried everything. sleeping in, staying home, even walking to the river and skipping rocks until sundown. But nothing changed. Nothing ever changed. Except now. Something had. Her. Later that night, he slipped on his headset, joined a queue, and blinked when he saw the match list. Spike 25. Online. Cass exhaled slowly, almost nervously, and selected 2 versus 2 fireteam. Seconds later, they loaded into the map. He spawned beside her avatar, sleek, agile, unmistakably dominant. Game on. The first few minutes were clinical, clean flank, timed smokes, double kill off the ridge. They moved like clockwork. Spike 25 says, "You're on fire today." "Yeah, kind of been a long week," Cass says. Sophie laughs. "It's Tuesday." "Yeah, April 11th. "Again," said Cass under his breath. Silence. Just the hum of wind in the digital trees. Then, "What?" says Sophie. Cass gathering up his courage. "Listen, you know Ellie, right?" "Yeah." Sophie sounds puzzled. "I'm her brother, Cass," he says. Another pause. The game didn't wait. Enemies pushed up from the west. Sophie is confused now. "Wait, what? Your Clockwork?" "Yeah, that's me," he says with no small degree of embarrassment. She didn't say anything at first. Then she missed a headshot. Cass forgot to watch the upper corridor. They both went down. Respawn timer ticking. Sophie finally breaks in. "Dude, no way. You're the quiet little brother who never talks." This little brother comment stung Cass a bit. "Yeah, well, that's mostly true. Except I've been stuck in April 11th for 9 days and counting." Sophie doesn't know how to respond to that. Okay, that's weirdly specific. They spawned back in, played less like elite teammates and more like people distracted by each other. She missed another shot. He tossed a grenade too late. "You okay?" she asked. "Not really, but talking to you kind of helps," he says. They lost the round. Neither of them seemed to care. They barely survived the next round. Sophie missed a frag toss. Cass forgot to reload. They were still playing Phantom Ops, but neither of them was really in the match anymore. Cass finally says, "I don't care if we lose. I want to talk." Sophie sighs. "Same. But if we keep talking, our rank's toast." There was a pause. "I'll be over in 10, she said. "Meet me downstairs." 10 minutes later, Cass stood at the front door, heart pounding. He opened it just as Sophie stepped up onto the porch. She didn't speak, just raised a single finger to her lips. "Shh." Then she took his hand, walked past him, up the stairs, straight into his room. She didn't sit, just stood near the window, scanning the posters on his wall like she was taking inventory of his entire world. "Okay," she said softly. "Tell me everything." So he did. The clocks, the pocket watch, the moment it froze at 8:05. The 10 versions of April 11th he'd lived and relived. The false starts, the dead ends, the hopelessness. And how hearing someone yell, "Nice Spike, 25." in the gym, bleachers had somehow changed everything. Sophie sat on the edge of his bed, hands laced in her lap. "So let's say I believe you," she said. "You already do," Cass said. "You're here." She didn't argue. Instead, they got to work. "You said the day resets like nothing ever happened," she said. "Exactly. When I wake up, it's always the same morning. Same smells, Same cereal box on the counter. Sophie thought for a moment. Maybe I could write a note to myself. It would be in my handwriting so I'd believe it, right? I could write down everything I did this morning, stuff only I'd know. Then you could come over in the morning, give me the note, and we could have all day to figure this out. That's a great idea, but it won't work. Whatever's on paper won't survive. Only my memory does. She stood and started pacing. Then you'll have to remember it. You're going to have to memorize it. Come over to my house in the morning and convince me. So they practiced, over and over. Sophie walked him through everything, from the pink shirt she chose over the red one, to the 37-minute scroll session on social media she swore she didn't mean to do, to the burnt toast, to the text she almost sent Ellie but deleted last second. Cass repeated it back, every step, every timestamp, until he had it cold. At some point past midnight, they both drifted off. The next morning, Cass rang the doorbell at Sophie's house. Still April 11th, of course. But this time, he had ammo. When she opened the door, half-dressed and mildly annoyed, he didn't wait. You brushed your teeth before picking out your shirt, he said. You went with pink. You burned the toast. You scrolled for 37 minutes. You deleted a text to Ellie. And you couldn't find your left shoe for like 10 solid minutes. Sophie stared at him. No words, just silence. So how do you know all of this? I mean, that's impossible. Were you in my house? I wasn't. It's not like that, Sophie. This is your plan. You were in my room last night. Okay, that sounded a little weird. Just please, give me 5 minutes. Sophie, arms crossed, one eyebrow raised. You have 5 minutes. Then I'm calling your sister. Cass told her everything. Fast and accurate. Every detail except one. He conveniently left out the part about him stalking her at the mall and taking the job because he wanted to buy her a purse. He felt like that little piece of the story might not help strengthen his case. But aside from that, he had no problem recalling every detail. When he'd finished his rapid-fire explanation for the reason he was standing on her front porch, reciting the intimate details of her early morning, he took a long, deep breath, as if he'd been underwater for the last 5 minutes. He stood there, breathless, with a pleading look on his face, waiting for the verdict. Did he have an ally, or was he about to stay gone for the next 15 hours? If there was a bright side to failing to convince her, he knew this day would end and he could try it all over again, the following day. After what seems an eternity, Sophie's hard expression finally softened. Her hands dropped to her sides. She said, "Okay, so where is this place you work?" Chapter 7. Watch the clock. They walked the last block in silence. Cass had replayed this stretch of sidewalk 6 times now. Same breeze off the alley, same chalky scuff on the curb near the fire hydrant. He could have walked it with his eyes closed. Along the way, he would point out things before they happened. At first, Sophie was skeptical, but the more times he did this, the more it seemed less like lucky predictions and more like he was telling the truth. By the time they arrived, Sophie was convinced. Sophie had her hands stuffed into her jacket pockets, curls pulled back in a puff under a grey knit beanie. She glanced up at the row of buildings as they approached. Then she squinted. Wait, what's this place called again? Finnegan's Watch and Clock, Cass said automatically. She stopped walking, tilted her head. It says Finnegan's Watch the Clock. Cass turned to look at the sign. From this angle, with the sun behind it, the lettering cast a light blur across the glass, The ampersand, small, old, almost decorative, sat wedged between watch and clock, but it barely registered. "Oh," he said. "Yeah, the and symbol's just really small." Sophie stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Right, I see it now." Then he whispered it aloud. "Watch the clock." Then again, firmer this time. He looked at her. She raised her eyebrows. "That means something to you?" "Yeah," he said slowly. "Yeah. I don't know. Maybe." Inside the shop, the ticking surrounded them. Dozens of rhythms, layered and imperfect. Each clock telling the same story in a different voice. Sophie looked around, turning slowly in a full circle. "Okay, I'll admit, this place is kind of cool." Cass grinned. "It grows on you. I've technically only worked here for a day and a half, though." She pointed to the register. "So, walk me through it." "Front desk, cash only. No computers. I take pickups and drop-offs, match tags, and write everything down in a big leather ledger. Finnegan handles the repairs." "And he's, what, a wizard?" "He's just really good with timepieces. Says he has special customers." "Special like?" Cass shrugged. "Didn't ask. Thought it was just some rich collector thing." Sophie wandered toward the back curtain. "What's back there?" "That's where the repair work is done. He builds clocks and watches too." She didn't wait for permission. The back room smelled like oil and cedar shavings. Light filtered through the blinds in angled beams. The walls were lined with shelves, organized by type: stand-up clocks, wall clocks, desktops, wristwatches, pocket watches. Sophie walked slowly, eyes moving from tray to tray. Cass followed, gesturing. "This is where I picked up the Hamilton for a customer. That's when I saw the pocket watch." "The one that stuck?" "Yeah, it'll be over here." He picked up and handed it to her. She turned it in her hands. "You weren't kidding. It's beautiful." Then she stopped. Her gaze drifted to the far corner, where the largest grandfather clock stood. It loomed over the others, elegant and imposing, with beveled glass and polished brass weights. "Wait, Cass." She walked toward it. "This face, look at this." Cass stepped beside her. She held up the pocket watch next to the clock's face. They matched, perfectly. Every ring, every hand. Even the faint glow on the fourth. "It's the same," she whispered. Cass stared. His stomach dropped. "Watch the clock," he whispered. "This clock chimed at 8 p.m. on my first day, right before I left with the watch." Sophie studied the lower panel. Something caught her eye. A small envelope, folded and yellowed, was tucked behind the hinge of the access door. She pulled it out and opened it carefully. "It's a note." She read aloud, "Mr. Finnegan, as discussed, the connection between the mobile unit and the base clock appears unstable. The watch receives changes made from the base, but the reverse no longer functions. This is what caused the last anomaly. As soon as the base unit is reset, the mobile device should return to full synchronization. Thank you again for your discretion. H.B." Sophie looked up, her face pale. "Cass, these aren't just clocks. They're connected, like built to work together. So, if I reset the grandfather clock, you might break the loop." "Cass," she said, "what time did you say the watch gets stuck on?" 8:05. "Why?" he asked. With wide eyes, Sophie asked, "Would that be about the time you left the shop?" Realization dawning on Cass. Yes. "And is the pocket watch running now?" she asked. "Yes. he said with a laugh. Here's what we do, Sophie said excitedly. I'll reset the hands of the grandfather clock to midnight. You tell me if the pocket watch responds. Sophie opened the door to the face of the grandfather clock and turned both the hour hand and the minute hand straight up. Then she paused. Nope, she said. That's only noon. She turned the hands another full turn. She closed the door. What time does the pocket watch read? 12, said Cass. Sophie smiled. This is going to work, Cass. Cassian opened the door to the shop and started to walk out. Cass, Sophie said. He stopped. What? Leave the pocket watch here, she said with a grin. That night they waited up as long as they could, but eventually fell asleep, lying on Cassian's bed. Chapter 8. We've Got Time. Cassian woke with that same dull ache behind his eyes, the one he now associated with waking up on April 11th. Again, the ceiling above him looked no different. His room smelled the same. His hoodie from the night before was still draped over the chair. He rolled over. Empty. No sign of Sophie. Of course not, he said, as he rolled his eyes exasperatedly. He sat up and sighed. The house sounded exactly the same too. His mom clinking pans in the kitchen, the low hum of Ellie's morning playlist drifting through the hallway. Same routine, same loop, same day. Cass rubbed his face, pulled on his hoodie, and trudged downstairs. He didn't even look up at first. He was too busy dragging his feet and mentally bracing for another déjà vu breakfast. But when he rounded the corner into the kitchen, he stopped cold. Sophie was sitting at the table, next to Ellie, holding a mug of coffee, laughing at something his mom just said. Cass blinked. Then, without thinking, he ran to her and wrapped his arms around her like she'd just returned from war. You're here, he said into her shoulder, voice cracking. You're actually here. Sophie laughed and hugged him back. But across the table, Ellie looked repulsed. Dude, what the... Get off her. Mrs. Warner raised her eyebrows in surprise. Is there something you two want to tell us? Cass let go awkwardly, stepping back. He looked at their stunned faces, then at Sophie, who was fighting back a smile. She, helped me rank up last night playing Phantom Ops. Sophie nodded seriously, like that was absolutely true. Yeah, turns out we make a good team, she said. Mrs. Warner said, Sophie, I didn't know you were a gamer. She's the best, Cass said. She is, Spike 25. Cass pulled out a chair and sat across from her, grinning so hard it hurt. The rest of breakfast settled into normalcy, but just barely. Cass let Ellie and Sophie chat like nothing had changed. He only spoke when he had to, mostly to avoid bursting. Sophie glanced at him once, beneath the rim of her mug. Her eyes sparkled. Later that morning, Cass headed out toward the shop. The world around him felt real again, not locked in repetition, just moving, the way that it should. He stopped for a second to look up at the sign above Finnegan's. It still said watch and clock, but now he couldn't not see it. Watch clock, watch the clock. Hey, Cass. He turned. Sophie jogged up, hoodie zipped, a bag slung over one shoulder. You weren't going to wait for me. Didn't know I could, he said. They walked in silence for a few steps. Then he looked over, nervous. So, do you think we could hang out sometime? I mean, not just like volleyball games or Phantom Ops. She looked at him, smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. We've got time. Epilogue. Wages. Sophie leaned in with a grin, quick and unexpected, and kissed Cassian on the cheek. He blinked, stunned, as she pulled back and tightened her hoodie. "See you later, Clockwork." And just like that, she was off, jogging across the street, curls bouncing, the early morning light catching the corner of her smile. Cass stood frozen on the sidewalk, the hint of her warmth still on his face. He reached into his pocket and checked the time on his phone. 8:40 a.m., April 12th. The shop felt lighter that day. Cass opened on time, straightened the front desk, dusted the glass cases. The clocks around him ticked in layered rhythm. But now it sounded less like pressure and more like music. Midday, the front bell rang. Mr. Finnegan stepped inside, brushing flecks of mist from his coat sleeves. "Morning, Cassian." "Hey, Mr. Finnegan." They didn't talk about the loop, or the pocket watch, or the way time itself had tried to pin him in place. Cass just worked. Customers came and went. Receipts were written. Coins were counted. And then, near closing, Finnegan reached under the counter and handed him a small folded envelope. "Almost forgot," he said. "Your wages." Cass opened it, then blinked. Inside were 5 crisp $100 bills. "Sir, I think there's been a mistake. You said $50 a day." Finnegan didn't look up, just thumbed calmly through his repair ledger. "Yes, that's right. And my records indicate you worked April 11th, 10 times yesterday." Cass hesitated. A quiet pause. Then he smiled, tucked the envelope into his hoodie, and nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Finnegan." He turned to go. "Will I see you tomorrow, Cassian?" the old man asked, still not looking up. "Yes, Mr. Finnegan," Cass said. "I'll be here." Outside, the street was quieter than usual. A warm breeze swept through the alleyways, tugging gently at his sleeves. He walked with purpose now. He glanced at his phone. 8:05 p.m. He thought of the money in his pocket and the purse that Sophie wanted and smiled. "The mall closes at 9. I have time. Plenty of time." This has been a story from the other side of now. If you enjoyed this story and you would like to hear more stories like this one, please like, subscribe, and comment.